All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're getting into that conversation like I mentioned earlier on. You remember the ICPD conference? Yes, there was a lot of controversy around it. Now we have the commitments that Kenya made. There are 11 of them, so we're going to go very practical. We'll talk about them one at a time and talk about how practical the application is and what it really means. This in the backdrop of a lot of misconception that led the president to speak about the national ethos twice. The opening of his statement, he said that Kenya is committing to the noble ideals of ICPD program of action in line with the framework of our constitution, national, social, cultural values, and ethos. He repeated those statements twice. I'm actually holding his statement right here. But first, let me introduce my guest to you. And we'd also like to hear your views on all these proposals. We're going to talk about them, 11 of them. One at a time, we'll talk about them and find out how practical they are. That's where we'd also like you to come in. 22422 is the SMS line. Trevor Mbijat, Citizen TV Kenya. #Daybreak. Let me start by introducing my guest from my immediate right, Dr. Josephine Kibaru Mbai, Director General, National Council for Population and Development, Asante Sana, and also very instrumental during the ICPD conference. She'll tell us what the misconception was all about and what actually came out. Followed by Dr. Dan Okoro, the UNFPA Head of Programs. Asante Sana for coming in. Also is the UNFPA Kenya Country Office. He's one of the patrons on this issue, right? Yes. Thank you. All right, and also followed by Sandra Mwirania, Health Rights Campaigner with Amnesty International Kenya. Thanks for making time for us. All right, let's bring up one of the first issues that came up. And I'll read them partly, but I'll also show you, and that's the first part of the commitments that came up. Number one was to enhance the country's population development programs to increased budgetary allocations, efficient implementation of programs and projects, and integration of population issues into the formulation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of all the policies. So that is highly summarized. It's basically just increasing budgetary allocations, efficient implementation of programs, integration of population issues in policy formulation by 2030. That's part one. Part two, which is also another controversial bit, is to ensure that to have the highest attainable standards of health, elimination of maternal newborn mortality, mother-child HIV infections, teenage pregnancies, and new adolescents HIV infections by 2030. So let's start with those two first. Then I'll run you through the others. The first one is to enhance having the whole issue of budgets, allocations, and people's policies, people's ideas being put into the policy formulation. So, and Dr. Josephine, I'll start with you. As it stands, we are choking in debt as a country, and the counties are also choking in graft. How practical is that commitment?
Well, I think it's quite practical, because we are trying to say that we need to mainstream population into all the planning processes at all levels, from national to county government. And, you know, there are still programs and projects going on at all these levels. But you find sometimes they are not, you know, mainstreaming issues or indicators related to population proactively. So basically, this tries to reposition population as a part of development. Yeah, because it's not like there's no money in Kenya. Yeah. I mean, programs are going on, but then you find the priority of these programs may not be in the right direction. So I think basically in as much as there may be need for new money, the old money needs to be properly used and targeted to the right areas.
Is the issue really the use of the money or the policies that go with them?
I think it starts right from the policies and also the understanding of those policies. Because, you know, we do have a national population policy for national development, population policy for national development. But Trevor, how many people even know what is in it? You know, how many people understand the principles in that in the policy, and also the actions which were meant to be implemented, to be in our action plans or work plans at all levels in order to actualize the policy. So you find we are not in sync with each other because of lack of understanding. So I think just talking about budgetary allocation is not the main issue here. The main issue is how do we get everybody on board in terms of implementing the population policy.
And then how do we get everybody on board? Because even right now as you speak, there's the CIDP, which is the County Integrated Development Plan, but most people don't even know it exists in the counties. There are some people who say that in the counties, all they do, the governor just sends a couple of messages to a few people and it's approved. How do you involve everyone?
Thanks, Trevor. Population matter, just looking at what's the discussion on that point. We're looking at development, and development is about the people. So, in a nutshell, what we're looking at is that how do we put a development which is people-centered? So, when looking at people-centered means that you look at the needs, the priorities that will address their needs, and by and large, all the CIDPs, the Country Integrated Development Plans, needs to be consultative, and it should start from the community level, going up to the county governing at the highest level at the county, where now they're presented to the governors. So it should not be something which is developed by the governor himself or herself, and then presenting it for approval by the county assembly. But it should be starts from what you usually call Wanjiku at that level.
So it should be more people-driven rather than the other way around.
And as the Director General has mentioned, and we're also looking at what ICPD is all about. It's just not issue of just development, but we know that this development is about the people, and it's not just about the numbers, but what is it that these people have, or who are these people?
So how will it be practically brought up? Are you going to go to the counties? What happens now?
I think after this conference, having ended, there will be analysis to synthesize what now as part of the discussion as we are going on, and just what does it really mean, and what does at the community level, what does it mean now, looking at the policies which are already in existence, because no new policy is coming out from the conference, but it says that whatever the policies are, the priorities that the government has put in place, how do the people contribute to it, and how does the government now allocate resources to it.
Sandra, what change of plan should be there? Because we've been having this almost for a decade, the new constitution now, and we're still struggling. Now we are giving a 2030 commitment. What will you do so differently that we haven't done in the last decade?
Just to echo my co-panelists here, is that when we're talking about inclusivity, when we're talking about people-centered, for this case, people-centered budgeting and investment, resource investment, it means that now we have to look at how exactly they're involved in the process. So not only looking at the needs, the needs and their rights, but then also looking at how they're empowered to actually monitor and hold these institutions, these mechanisms accountable. Because if there's a political commitment to then invest using resources in our needs and our rights, it means that I want to be also part of checking that the money indeed, the resources indeed are being used as they have been committed to be used. From 1994 to even now, as we're looking forward, that is the rallying call, that we want to be involved in how these resources are distributed, how they're monitored, and how we can actually measure the impact of meeting the commitments.
So it's really about the impact and how it is being implemented. And now joining us now is Geoffrey Kiduku, Stretchers Youth Organization from Mombasa. Thank you for making time. Umechelewa kidogo lakini karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
So we were talking about the first commitment that was done at the ICPD by Kenyan chapter, where they're enhancing population and development programs to increased budgetary allocations. Where do you think the gaps are when it comes to that in the counties? Are the people involved in the counties when it comes to making decisions?
Yeah, people are involved, but again, their inputs are not considered when it comes to consideration. So I think that should be put into action, because their views matters a lot. When they give out their inputs, they should be considered, because it's what affects them.
So do you think now, is it a fault of the governors who are not listening, or what's going on? Is it a policy issue, or is it the people who are not really empowered?
I think the people they are not empowered, but again, the policymakers are also ignorant of what the people are giving out. Okay. So I think that's a problem too.
All right. Yeah. Let's take on part 2 of that commitment. That's a part where there's a lot, the rubber now meets the road. Let's bring it up and talk about it. To ensure all citizens attain the highest possible standard of health. And this will entail elimination of the following: preventable maternal and newborn mortality, mother-to-child transmission of HIV, teenage pregnancies, and adolescent and youth HIV infections, again, by 2030. Here's where my concern is. How do you eliminate teenage pregnancies and new adolescent youth HIV infections by 2030 without bringing in the aspect where the mothers were saying that they do not want to have contraceptives introduced? Yes, Dr. Rose. Dr. Josephine, I'll start with you.
Yes, thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
Now, I think why this commitment is there, as a country, we know we have a problem with our teenagers. We know the figures, of teenage pregnancies. 18% of them are getting pregnant. Yeah. We have the new HIV infections. Most of them are actually in the teenagers, and especially the slightly older, 20 to 24, which means they get infected when they are 10 to 19. And basically what this means is our young people are having sex. So we cannot continue burying our heads in the sand, which I think is one of the bone of contention on how then do we deal with that situation. So when the president says we aim to eliminate this, it means that there's a need to bring back or to rally all aspects into seeing how this can happen, starting right from home. Family. I know maybe you did not read the preamble of all the commitments, but one of the things we put, or which was there in the preamble, is the issue of family. So we need to begin right from at home, empower the parents. Yeah. These days, the parents seem like the young people know more than them, because they have these gadgets and they are all over the place. Yeah. But they are still the parents. So we have to begin right from the homes and make sure that the parents are able to talk to their young people as they are growing. Right from 5 years, 6 years, there has to be some discussion around information around their bodies, the changes which are happening in their body, because some of this is left to the YouTube and all that. That's where they are getting all their info. Yeah. Then apart from that, then moving on, what are the other mechanisms which can be put in place to try and deal with this issue of teenage sexuality? Actually, that's what it's all about, because if they are getting pregnant, they are getting HIV/AIDS. Where the road meets the rubber, whatever. The rubber meets the road. The rubber meets the road. Yes. It's because they are having sex early. So at what point should this intervention begin? Because that is where the bone of contention is. Parents feel like they need to extend it a bit. Statistics show that there is action happening even at a younger age. At what point does the intervention begin? I think information on the young people's sexuality or their bodies is a lifelong kind of thing, right from when they are small. Young girls need to understand why they are different from their brothers. Okay. And somebody must tell them that, or they are going to explore. Yeah. They need to understand, what is like a good touch against a bad touch, so that they can even prevent themselves from being, sexually molested by their relatives. You find sometimes some of these things are not discussed at all. Okay. So starting at home, that is one area. Then moving on to other levels. Of course, the school. There's the whole issue of what is the information which is given at what level. And I know we've had a big debate about the comprehensive sexuality education. And that language has not been acceptable and approved in Kenya. Yeah. But we do know that there's need for age-appropriate sexuality information for young people. And that's part of what the Ministry of Education has been exploring in the last few years as they do reform the curriculum.
Yeah.
What is appropriate for 5-year-olds in nursery? What is appropriate for 10-year-olds in class 5, or the grades as they're coming up? So as part of that, we are calling it the competency-based curriculum.
Yeah.
What are also the other competencies which should be included in the curriculum to empower, first of all, the teacher to know what they are going to teach and how to teach it, because that is usually a gap.
Yeah.
And then also to give the proper information at the right time.
Okay.
So that is something which is going on and which is extremely necessary, because from home the kids are in school.
Yeah.
So there needs to be an environment where they understand themselves, they understand how to relate with their colleagues, boys and girls, teachers and other people.
Yeah.
So I think we cannot say it starts here and ends here. Okay. Yeah, so I'll stop there. Maybe we can talk about contraceptives as every other person says something.
We are going to talk about contraceptives in just a bit, but let me take a quick break. When we come back, we'd like to hear your views on all these commitments. We'll read through all of them, all the 10 of them. We are done with the first one. We're on the second one now that seeks to eliminate teenage pregnancies and new adolescents and youth HIV infections by 2030. What we're trying to craft now is how to do that without introducing contraceptives too early in life, and without pushing the parents to have sexuality conversations with their children too early as well. They were saying that they're being pushed into it, and that is not what they want to have. 22422 is SMS line. At Trevor Mbija, Citizen TV Kenya, #Daybreak. See you in just a bit.